was supposed to be a short, peaceful flight. On August 12, 1985, Japan Airlines Flight 123 departed from Tokyo's Haneda Airport on a routine trip to Osaka. It was a domestic flight just 54 minutes long, carrying people home for the open holiday, a time when families returned to honor their ancestors. The passengers were a mix of children, parents, grandparents, tourists, and business travelers. Some chatted cheerfully, others relaxed with books or music. Among them was 12-year-old Keiko Kawakami, a young girl traveling with her family. Also on board was pop star Kyu Sakamoto, famous for his international hit Sukiyaki. The plane, a Boeing 747-SR, had flown more than 18,000 flights since entering service. Specially built for short domestic routes, it had more seating and stronger landing gear than international 747s. The aircraft pushed back from the gate at 6:04 p.m. Engines hummed, passengers fastened seatbelts, the takeoff felt normal. But what no one knew was that hidden in the back of the plane, beneath metal panels and forgotten repairs, was a silent countdown. A mistake made 7 years ago was about to explode. The crew that day was experienced and highly qualified. Captain Masami Takahama, 49, was a senior training captain with over 12,000 hours of flying time. He wasn't just flying, he was supervising First Officer Yutaka Sasaki, 39, who was undergoing evaluation to become a captain. Flight engineer Hiroshi Fukada, 46, had nearly 10,000 flight hours and had worked with this aircraft many times. The aircraft itself, tail number JA8119, had been flying since 1974. It had suffered a tail strike accident in 1978 while landing. The damage wasn't visible from the outside, and maintenance records showed it had been repaired. The repair paperwork was signed off, inspected, and cleared. The Boeing 747 was considered one of the safest and most reliable aircraft in the sky. At the time, Japan Airlines used it even for short domestic flights because of its ability to carry large numbers of passengers comfortably. To passengers and the flight crew, this was just another day in the sky. But deep inside the rear pressure bulkhead, a curved wall that seals the pressurized cabin, a flawed repair was waiting to fail. Flight 123 took off from runway 15L at 6:12 p.m. and began climbing steadily. The mood on board was light. People settled in for the brief journey, flight attendants prepared to begin service, some passengers had already fallen asleep. The plane passed over Tokyo Bay, then began heading southwest along Japan's coastline. At 6:24 p.m., the aircraft leveled up at its cruising altitude of 24,000 feet. Everything seemed normal. In the cockpit, the conversation was casual. The pilots performed routine checks. One passenger asked to use the restroom before the seatbelt sign was turned off. The cabin was calm. But then, without warning, a loud explosion rocked the plane. The rear pressure bulkhead had ruptured. It had finally given away after thousands of pressurization cycles. The explosive decompression tore open the back of the aircraft, collapsing ceiling panels in the rear bathrooms and cutting through the hydraulic lines. The vertical stabilizer, the tail fin, ripped off the aircraft. Everything changed in seconds. The aircraft was now without stability, without hydraulics, and without control. And no one, on board or on the ground, understood just how bad it was yet. Inside the cabin, there was chaos. Passengers heard a loud bang. The plane dipped sharply, then rose again violently. Ceiling panels fell, oxygen masks dropped, but many masks didn't work, especially in the back, where damage had cut supply lines. The lack of pressure and oxygen caused hypoxia. Passengers and crew members began feeling dizzy, confused, and disoriented. Some began writing farewell letters to loved ones. Some wrote notes and tucked it into their bags, pockets, and tray tables. In the cockpit, the pilots quickly radioed Tokyo Area Control, and they said, "Request emergency, hydraulic pressure lost, turning back to Haneda." But turning wasn't possible. The plane was no longer responding to the rudder or autopilot. Every system that controlled the flight, including flaps and elevators, was dead. The aircraft began Dutch rolling, swaying side to side uncontrollably, and climbing and diving again and again in large waves. Flight engineer Fukuda tried to understand what had failed. "The gear door?" he asked. The crew thought maybe a door had fallen off or an engine had exploded, but there were no warning lights, no answers. The truth was worse than anyone could imagine. With all hydraulics lost, the pilots had only one option left: use the engines. By adjusting engine power on either side of the aircraft, they discovered they could create small changes in direction. By throttling up or down, they could affect the angle. It was hard, but it worked for now. Using only the engines, they began attempting wide, looping turns, hoping to aim toward Tokyo or Nagoya, a closer airport. Controllers on the ground tried to guide them, but the plane wasn't following instructions. It couldn't. The aircraft continued its cycle, climbing steeply, then diving hard. In some drops, it lost over 4,000 feet at a time. The crew fought with everything they had. Captain Takahama called for full power. They hoped the engine thrust could raise the nose, level the wings, and save lives. It was a masterclass in emergency flying. Even if it was an uncontrollable aircraft, the pilots kept it flying for nearly half an hour. But time was running out. The mountains ahead were getting closer, and the aircraft was losing altitude fast. At 6:56 p.m., Flight 123 struck Mount Takamagahara, a forested mountain ridge northwest of Tokyo. The right wing hit the slope first, tearing apart trees and snapping the aircraft's body. The plane spun violently, flipped upside down, and exploded. The impact was so strong it registered on a seismic detector 100 kilometers away. Flight 123 disappeared from radar. Communication went silent. In a matter of seconds, over 500 people were gone. News of the crash began spreading. Families watching TV saw breaking headlines. A JAL flight was missing. Airports fell silent as word spread. In the sky, an American military aircraft, a C-130 Hercules, had spotted the wreckage. The crew immediately radioed the location to Japanese officials. They were ready to help. Helicopters, medics, gear, all standing by. But no rescue was sent that night. The Japanese government declined foreign assistance. They decided to send their own forces the next morning. While smoke rose from the mountains, survivors lay scattered in the dark, injured, cold, and still alive. They waited for help that would not come until it was too late. As night fell, temperatures dropped. In the broken remains of Flight 123, some passengers had survived the crash. They were burned, bleeding, and trapped, but alive. One of them, Yumi Oi, the off-duty flight attendant, would later say she heard voices all around her. A boy crying for his mother, a woman whispering, "We'll be saved." Then one by one, the voices went quiet. Above, helicopters circled the wreck, but no one landed. The terrain was steep, the fire still burning. A military pilot later said, "We saw no signs of life," so they turned back. The next morning, nearly 14 hours after the crash, the first rescuers arrived. They found 4 survivors, including Yumi Oi, an off-duty flight attendant, Hiromi Yoshizaki, and her 8-year-old daughter Makiko, and Kiko Kawakami, who was 12 years old. They were all seated in the rear left section, one of the few parts of the plane that remained intact. Many others had survived the crash, but died during the long, freezing night without rescue. The tragedy didn't end with the crash, it continued in the silence that followed. Investigation revealed the cause, a bad repair after a 1978 tail strike. Instead of following Boeing's instructions, workers used a weaker fix. It looked fine, but after 12,000 flights, the bulkhead broke. The tail tore off, hydraulics failed. A hidden mistake sealed the plane's fate. Japan was devastated. It remains the worst single aircraft crash in history. Airline leaders resigned. One mechanic died by suicide. Aviation rules changed. Repairs became stricter. Pilots were trained to handle total hydraulic loss. At the crash site, final messages were found. One read, "Take care of our children. I love you." Flight 123 became a painful lesson, learned too late. Flight 123 was more than a crash. It was a story of bravery, heartbreak, and love. Pilots kept flying with no controls. The survivors endured a freezing night. Many died writing goodbyes. One mistake caused it, but courage remained. We remember all 520 lives, not just for how they died, but for what they left behind. Rest in peace.